Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Today we're actually going to start a new build series featuring my car, the Goblin. So why is it called the Goblin? Funny story, my wife thinks it's completely hideous. She called it the Goblin. It looks like a goblin, the Green Goblin being green, so that's what it became. So it is a 1994 325 IS. For the most part, I've done Kona yellow lines, Dinan springs, Dinan sway bars, has a Dinan muffler, a couple other stuff under the hood we'll show you in a bit. AC Schnitzer Type 3s, which were a junkyard come up actually. It was just at the right place at the right time. So I already have M3 calipers in the front. Once I swap in the M3 trailing arms, that's when the rear M3 calipers will go on in the rear. Got these mirrors for free, that's why they're red. That's why they're red. I always told myself, I'll paint them black, don't worry about it, but it became part of the look. As for the interior, it's pretty much halfway gutted at this point. You can see there's not much there, very minimal carpet. So over here, nothing too crazy. It was just a used sparkle seat that I bought off a buddy of mine with our floor mounts. Yes, they're purple. Goes with the purple quick disconnect for the NRG. And guess what the color of the shifter will be? You guessed it, purple. Yes, it's an automatic now, but after the series, it won't be. So let's go on to what's under the hood, which shocks everybody, which by the way, hood, carbon fiber hood. But here's the engine bay. Dinan Supercharger. It's the old kit. I'm actually gonna rebuild it in the series as well. So that including with the kit of the Dinan throttle body, Dinan injectors, I had the valve cover powder coated red Mishimoto hoses to match. I still have AC. Heater and AC still work, and it's cold, so I'm not getting rid of it. I'm keeping it as long as I can. Once it does die out where I actually have to replace the compressor or something, then I'll get rid of it. For now, all I have to do is keep refilling it, I'm keeping it. Screw that. So what's the purpose of the series? To take what used to be a daily driver and turn it into a full-blown track car. I've been wanting to do this for a while, especially since I have my E36 that is now my current daily. This can now get turned into the track car. I have everything to swap it to a manual, so pretty much from the transmission back, I got from a donor E36 M3. So transmission, drive shaft, the whole rear end, trailing arms, the diff, all that good stuff. All of the E36 products that we make are all going to go onto the car. They're all going to get tested, pretty much like we have with the yellow E36 and the drift E36 that we have. And one of the things that we're going to take advantage of during the series is actually make instructional videos for all the parts we make for the E36. So be on the lookout for those. I know a lot of guys have been asking for instructions. So what better way to do two birds? What better way for two needs with one deed? I think is the reference. So yeah, let's get started. What's up guys, thanks for joining. Today I'm going to show you how to remove your E36 rear subframe. Alright, so first step is going to be removing the nuts for the e-brake cables that go up inside the car. So before you get under the car, you want to go ahead and just get this step done. That way you don't have to go up and down from the car. You remove the boot, just pull it from the back first and then it pops out because the front is a hook. So if you try to do it from the front, you might break it. So you have an 8mm and a 10mm combo. The 8mm acts as a jam nut and then the 10mm actually tightens it. So you're gonna wanna remove both those, and then you can just pop them right here in your little cup holder. Oh, I lied. So it actually turns out it's a 9mm jam nut with a 12mm adjusting nut. After you move those, you want to go ahead and leave the car in neutral. So at the bottom, you can spin the drive shaft and access all the bolts. And the same thing to the manual, just leave your e-brake down, leave the transmission in neutral. So after you remove the nuts from the e-brake cables, you're gonna start with the exhaust after you have your safety glasses on and the car is safely secured on jack stands. So you're actually, the way I found it to be easiest is you wanna remove the rear portion first. So you're gonna start with the 4 bolts that will release the actual hangers of the exhaust. From there, you're gonna move back here and remove the 4 nuts and bolts that hold the rear section to the midsection, and then you'll be able to wiggle this off and get it out. After you remove the actual muffler portion of it, you're gonna wanna start with the front half. So each pipe has 3 bolts in a triangle at the actual exhaust manifold. So it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 for each pipe on the exhaust. Once you have that loose, let it kind of hang there, and then you want to come back over here to the middle section and remove the 2 bolts that actually support the middle section of the exhaust, and from there you'd be able to wiggle it out. If you do have this bar or an X-brace on your car, you're gonna have to remove it so the whole exhaust can fall completely, because you do have studs that is gonna be locked into. All right, so 12 nut, 13 bolt. And over here we have 4 13s. You want to use a semi-deep or a deep socket, preferably with a wobble extension. So from here you're gonna want to let it kind of fall off, let the hangers get loose, and then you kind of just wiggle it out, and then the whole thing just comes down. So you do want to soak these with some WD-40 or PB blaster, so because they might snap on you. But I've removed this exhaust a couple times before, so it's coming off fairly easy compared to the very first time that I did it. And don't forget about your O2 sensor. It's a dangerous job. Gonna put one nut there for safety. Don't forget about your O2 sensor. It just spins off and easy to disconnect. Leave it on the exhaust because you don't want to really remove and put on these threads. They tend to get kind of stripped sometimes. So it's safer just to remove the whole oxygen sensor with it. So now you're gonna remove the 2 bolts that support the center part of the exhaust. And then you support it with the other hand. Boop. And swiggle it, it'll start to come out. There it is. Next, what you want to do is remove the heat shield, and it's just 6 10-minute bolts, pretty much on both ends and then in the middle. And this will give you access to the drive shaft. Extremely heavy. So next, just remove this bracket. It's 4 bolts. Let's go. 1, 2, and then 2 more opposite side, exact same area. And then after that, 4 bolts on the drive shaft. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4. You have 2 center support bearing bolts, and then you have 3 at the guibo. And then you can just remove it, the ones that actually go through the drive shaft itself, and then leave the guibo connected to the transmission. Now when doing the rear, you can either kind of go in and out of the car. Like for example, you have the bottom 2 exposed, go put it in park so you can break these loose. Go back up, put it in neutral, twist it for the other 2 to be exposed, put it back in park, break them loose. Or another option is like the way I'm doing it. So I use the pry bar to jam it against the actual flange. So I'll put it in like this. So between the flange and the nut, and I'll have leverage there, and I can break it loose, break the bolts loose. So they're jammed in there, and now break it loose. Oh, all right, all broken loose. So you leave the center support bearing for last, because that's gonna start to droop on you. So you want these, the front and the rears out first, so they can, when you remove the center support bearing, you can actually support it and then start to wiggle it out. I'll show you what I mean. Support it. That's 1. 2. And then you're just gonna bring it down and then start to wiggle it out. So you got the front off, and then now you can just pull off the rear, and there you go. All right, so if you haven't already, go ahead and remove your rear wheels, because that's gonna be in the way. So next, you want to remove your e-brake cables. You just pretty much pull it down from this little clamp, and then you start to wiggle it out, and then it should just slide on out. Sometimes it will get stuck up top. In this area, you have to have somebody go up, wiggle it around for you, and then while you pull it out from the bottom. Nice. So both came out smoothly. So you just let that kind of hang out. All right, so once you got the e-brake cables removed, I'm gonna use the pole jack to support the trailing arm. You can use your regular jack if you're doing it on the floor. We're gonna do this. All right, so you have 2 options here. I already have stainless steel brake lines, so I don't wanna open it up and have to bleed the brakes again. If you don't have stainless steel brake lines, now's the perfect time to swap it. Since I don't wanna open up the brakes, I'm just gonna remove the bolt for the rear shock and the bolt for the lower control arm, so I can swing the whole caliper out. And then also there's 2 bolts that hold the whole assembly, the whole hose to the actual trailing arm itself. It's 2 10mm. So you pretty much remove all that and you swing it out, and then you kind of throw it over the trailing arm and you hang it over here out of your way. So when it comes down to removing the whole subframe, it's not getting caught. All right, so I'm gonna start off with just removing the 2 bolts for the actual caliper bracket. So I'm gonna remove the whole unit as a whole. So I'm just gonna let that hang out there. In the meantime, I'm gonna remove, I believe it's an 18 or a 17. Yeah, so it's 18 for the strut, 18 on both sides for the lower control arm bolt. So now that that's loose, I can move this and pull this down. I'm gonna remove the caliper, all in one shot. Now we pass it through here. So from here, actually, you can actually buy these like at Harbor Freight. It's just hook tools for your caliper right in there, and then it's gonna hook it up to the gas tank bracket, and then It's nice. There's no tension on the actual brake line, so it's nice and safe. All right, so you're gonna repeat the exact same thing on this side. So I'm gonna get to that, and so we can speed things along. So now that you got the calipers out of the way and safely secured, it's time for the sensors. So one is gonna be your actual brake pad sensor, which I already just removed and looped here. So then it comes out, and then you have a box up here that you open the flap and you disconnect it from there. So you have one sensor on one side only. So next, after the brake pad wear sensor, is the ABS. So you move this bolt, I believe it's like a 6 hex. So you just wiggle it out, pull it out, and then same thing, you take it off from the little clips, all the way down, and then up to the box. So next is removing the trailing arm, and you just do the 3 bolts that are 18 millimeters in the pocket here, same for both sides. Just careful, once you remove it, the weight is just gonna wanna swing down. So I recommend putting a jack or a pole jack like I'm gonna be using. Nice and slow, nice and slow. So repeat the same steps on the other side. All right, so now that both trailing arms are loose from the pockets, now it's the actual 4 main bolts that actually hold the subframe to the chassis. Since I'm working on the lift, I'm actually using a full transmission jack, but it also works well to drop your subframes. If you're doing this on the floor on jack stands, they actually do sell like a regular jack style transmission jack that can help with this. It pretty much has a plate like this on it. If you don't have one, you kind of MacGyver it, get like a nice good thick piece of plywood that's a good size with maybe blocks to keep it even, just because these front ones are bolts. So you're gonna have to keep it as even as possible to bring it down. It can come down at an angle or it will get stuck. So I got them in place, gonna tighten these up. Even I'm using a little piece of wood to support it. That's why, so I wanna make sure it's dead straight. All right, tight, so gonna hit this 4. Almost forgot. Speed sensor for the diff, on the diff. 2 tabs on the side, wiggle it out. Removed. So now I'm just gonna slide this out of the way, clean up the 4 points for welding the reinforcement plates, along with the actual pocket of the trailing arms. That should be it. All right. Whether you have it, nothing to it, pretty straightforward. If you want a video or if you want to know how to remove your subframe bushings and how to install our new ones, there's a video on that in the link below. Also for the diff cover bushings and the front diff carrier, there's also going to be a video for that in the link below. Be sure to watch those if you want to learn how to do that. But thank you for tuning in. There'll be more instructional videos coming soon.